Hey everyone, I need to tell you something before we start. This story is going to completely mess with your head. I'm talking about the kind of forbidden attraction that makes your heart race and your conscience scream at the same time. You know that feeling when you know something is wrong, but it feels so incredibly right that you can't help yourself? That's exactly what happened to me, and I'm still trying to process how everything unfolded. If you're ready to dive into a story about family secrets, billionaire romance, and the most twisted game of love and betrayal I've ever experienced, then you're in the right place. But first, do me a huge favor and hit that like button right now. Trust me, you're going to want to share this story with everyone you know by the end. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? I share the most incredible real-life stories that honestly sound too crazy to be true. But I promise you, every single word of what I'm about to tell you actually happened. This isn't just another love story. This is about how one engagement party changed three lives forever, how a stepmother's jealousy nearly destroyed a family, and how sometimes the universe has the most unexpected way of serving justice. So buckle up, because we're about to explore what happens when forbidden love collides with family loyalty, and when karma decides to settle the score in the most dramatic way possible. My name is Lily, and 6 months ago, I thought I had my life figured out. I was 24, working as a graphic designer, living in my own little apartment, and trying to build something meaningful after losing my mom 3 years earlier. Dad had finally found happiness again with Victoria, this stunning 38-year-old socialite who seemed to worship the ground he walked on. At least, that's what I thought at the time. Victoria swept into our lives like a hurricane of designer clothes and expensive perfume. She had this way of making every room feel smaller just by walking into it. And honestly, I was happy for Dad. After watching him grieve Mom for so long, seeing him smile again felt like a miracle. Sure, Victoria wasn't exactly warm toward me, but I figured she just needed time to adjust to having a stepdaughter. Everything changed the night of their engagement party. Dad had rented this gorgeous rooftop venue downtown, and Victoria was practically glowing in her champagne-colored dress, showing off her massive diamond ring to anyone who'd look. I was genuinely happy for them, playing the supportive daughter role perfectly, when Victoria grabbed my arm with that fake smile of hers. "Lily, darling, I want you to meet someone very special," she purred, leading me across the crowd toward this man standing alone by the windows, looking out at the city lights. When he turned around, I swear time stopped. Adrian Blackwood was nothing like the tech billionaires you see in magazines. No awkward glasses or rumpled clothes. This man was devastatingly handsome, with dark hair, piercing green eyes, and this quiet intensity that made my stomach flip. "Adrian, this is my stepdaughter Lily," Victoria announced, but there was something strange in her voice, like she was watching our reaction carefully. When our eyes met, I felt this electric shock run through my entire body. The way he looked at me wasn't polite or casual. It was like he was seeing straight into my soul. And from the way his jaw tightened slightly, I could tell he felt it too. "It's a pleasure to meet you," he said, his voice deeper than I expected. And when he shook my hand, his fingers lingered just a second too long. Victoria noticed immediately, her smile becoming razor-sharp as she possessively linked her arm through his. That handshake changed everything, though I didn't know it yet. That single moment of connection would tear my family apart, expose secrets that should have stayed buried, and ultimately lead to the most incredible twist of fate I never saw coming. 3 days after the engagement party, my phone rang. I was working late on a client project when Adrian's name appeared on my screen, and my heart immediately started racing. Victoria had apparently decided that since I was artistic, I should help plan their wedding. What she didn't tell me was that Adrian would be the one coordinating everything with me. "I hope you don't mind." His voice was carefully neutral over the phone, but I could hear something underneath it. "Victoria thought it would be easier if I worked directly with you on the details. She's busy with other preparations." Those other preparations turned out to be spa days and shopping trips while Adrian and I spent hours together, supposedly choosing flowers and venues. But we both knew what was really happening. Every meeting was charged with this incredible tension that we were both trying desperately to ignore. He'd pick me up in his sleek black Tesla, and we'd drive to wedding venues while talking about everything except the wedding. I learned that despite his billions, Adrian had grown up lonely, raised by nannies, while his parents built their empire. He told me about his fear of ending up in a loveless marriage like theirs, how he'd convinced himself that companionship was enough until he met, and then he'd stop talking, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Victoria, meanwhile, was showing her true colors more each day. She'd make subtle digs about my clothes, my job, my presence in her house. When I'd visit Dad, she started pushing me to date her friend's son, this pretentious lawyer named Brandon, who made my skin crawl. When I politely declined, she got nasty. "You're 24, Lily," she said one afternoon, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Don't you think it's time to move on? Your father and I are starting our new life together, and honestly, having you around so much is difficult for our relationship." Dad was completely blind to it. When I tried to tell him how Victoria was treating me, he'd brush it off as adjustment period and wedding stress. But Adrian saw it. During one of our venue visits, I broke down crying in his car after Victoria had been particularly cruel that morning. "She wants me gone," I whispered, wiping my eyes. "She thinks I'm in the way of her perfect life with Dad." Adrian turned in his seat, his green eyes blazing with anger. "You're not in anyone's way, Lily. He reached out like he was going to touch my face, then caught himself. "God, this is so messed up." That's when I knew we were both fighting the same losing battle. The attraction between us was becoming impossible to deny, and we were running out of strength to keep pretending it didn't exist. What started as wedding planning was turning into something dangerous, something that could destroy everything we both cared about. The breaking point came during our final venue meeting at Adrian's penthouse. We were supposed to be confirming catering details, but instead we found ourselves standing on his terrace, the city sprawling beneath us like scattered diamonds. The sexual tension that had been building for weeks was suffocating. "I can't do this anymore," Adrian said suddenly, his back to me as he gripped the railing. "I can't marry her, Lily, not when I feel like this about you." My heart stopped. "Adrian, don't." He turned around, and the raw emotion in his eyes nearly brought me to my knees. "I've tried to fight it. God knows I've tried. But every time I look at you, every time you smile, I feel more alive than I have in years. This isn't just attraction, Lily. This is wrong," I whispered, but I was already walking toward him. "She's my stepmother. Dad loves her. This would destroy him. And what about us?" His voice was desperate now. "What about what we feel?" When he kissed me, it was like the world exploded around us. Every rational thought vanished as his hands tangled in my hair, and I kissed him back with 3 weeks of suppressed longing. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not Victoria, not Dad, not the consequences that would surely follow. But Victoria was smarter than either of us realized. 2 days later, she cornered me in Dad's kitchen with a manila envelope in her hands and a smile that could freeze hell. "Interesting photos," she said, sliding pictures across the counter. There we were, Adrian and me on his balcony, lost in that kiss that had changed everything. Taken from the building across the street. Amazing what money can buy these days. My blood turned to ice. "Victoria, I can explain." "Oh, I think the photos explain everything perfectly." Her voice was poison sweet. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to disappear from our lives completely. No more family dinners, no more visits, no more contact with your father or Adrian. If you don't, I'll make sure everyone sees these pictures, including your heartbroken father. Imagine how devastated he'll be to learn his precious daughter seduced his future son-in-law." I was trapped, and Victoria knew it. The wedding was 3 weeks away, and she held all the cards. For 2 weeks, I lived in hell. I avoided Dad's calls, ignored Adrian's desperate texts, and watched from a distance as Victoria played the perfect bride-to-be. She'd won, and she knew it, but Adrian wasn't giving up that easily. The night before the rehearsal dinner, he showed up at my apartment, his eyes wild with determination. "I hired my own investigator," he said, pushing past me into my living room. "Lily, you need to see this." He pulled out his phone, showing me bank statements, photos, text messages. My hand shook as I scrolled through the evidence. Victoria wasn't just manipulating our family. She was systematically stealing from Dad's business accounts, funneling money into offshore accounts. Worse, she was having an affair with Adrian's business partner Marcus, planning to take everything from both men after the wedding. "She's been playing us all," Adrian said, his voice tight with fury. "The engagement, the wedding, everything was just an elaborate con. She needed Dad's respectability and my business connections, but she never intended to stay faithful to either of us." The rehearsal dinner was that night, and Adrian had a plan. "Trust me," he said, taking my hands. "By tomorrow, everyone will know exactly who Victoria really is." I'll never forget walking into that elegant restaurant and seeing Victoria in her pristine white dress, laughing with the guests like she didn't have a care in the world. Dad looked so proud, so happy, completely oblivious to the fact that his fiancée had been robbing him blind. Adrian stood up during the toasts, his champagne glass catching the light. "I'd like to say something about love," he began, his voice carrying across the room. "True love is honest. It's faithful. It's transparent." His eyes found Victoria's, and I watched her face go pale. "Unfortunately, what we're celebrating tonight is none of those things." He pulled out his phone, connecting it to the restaurant's screen system. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the real Victoria Chen." The photos and financial records filled the screen. Her affair with Marcus, the stolen money, even recorded phone calls where she laughed about manipulating stupid old men for their money. The room erupted in gasps and shocked whispers as Victoria's perfect facade crumbled in real time. Dad's face went through a dozen emotions before settling on heartbroken fury. Victoria tried to run, but hotel security was already waiting by the exits. Justice had finally arrived. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Victoria. Within hours, the police had arrested her for embezzlement and fraud. Marcus, her partner in crime, was also taken into custody. The woman who had tried to destroy our family was finally facing the consequences of her actions. And honestly, watching her get handcuffed in that expensive white dress felt like the universe balancing itself out. Dad was devastated but grateful. "I'm so sorry, Lily," he said through tears the next morning, holding me tight. "She poisoned me against you, made me believe you were jealous and causing problems. I should have listened to my daughter instead of a stranger." It took time, but our relationship slowly healed. Dad threw himself into therapy and rebuilding the business Victoria had nearly destroyed. Adrian and I took things slowly. We'd been through too much trauma to rush into anything, but the connection between us was undeniable. 6 months later, when he proposed on the same terrace where we'd shared our first kiss, I said yes without hesitation. This time, there were no secrets, no lies, just pure love built on truth and trust. Our wedding was everything Victoria's would have been: fake, small, intimate, filled with people who genuinely loved us. Dad walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes, telling me how proud he was of the woman I'd become. Even better, we later learned that Victoria's other victims, 3 previous fiancés she'd scammed, came forward after seeing the news coverage. She was sentenced to 8 years in prison. But here's the final twist that still gives me chills. 2 weeks before our wedding, we discovered that Victoria had one last desperate plan. She'd convinced a cellmate's boyfriend to crash our ceremony with some wild story about Adrian being a fraud. Hotel security found him in the parking lot with fake documents and a recording device, clearly planning to ruin our special day. Even from prison, Victoria was still trying to destroy our happiness. But you know what? She failed. Love won, truth won, And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe really does serve up the perfect karma. So that's my story, how a forbidden attraction became the greatest love of my life, and how a manipulative woman's greed became her ultimate downfall. If this story taught me anything, it's that the truth always finds a way to surface, and real love is worth fighting for, no matter how impossible it seems. Thanks for listening to my crazy journey, and remember, like and subscribe for more incredible true stories.